I'll start. I'm going to record this session. Just going to check if there's any messages in the chat. Fantastic. All right. So, yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining. Last week I covered learning unit 2, which was index numbers. I'm hoping everyone is comfortable with that section by now. But you'll only know when to start revising. I did provide some exercises to work through to see if your understanding of it is where you want it to be. I hope you gave that a shot. So today we're going to move on to learning unit 3, which deals with central measures and dispersion measures. Today I'm actually going to split it up, with today covering central measures, and the next week I'll cover dispersion measures. So learning unit 3 will be split up in 2 weeks. All right. After this session, I'm gonna post the ICE tasks up as well. You can do them whenever you're ready to do it, but pretty much once you've covered learning unit 3, which is this week and next week, then you should be good to pretty much do all 4 ICE tasks. The due date, I think it's around the 13th of the 13th of October, but I will confirm that. But just to give you a rough idea, but around that time. When I put the test up, then I'll confirm the due date. So yeah, all 4 ICE tasks, you'll have more than enough time to complete them. And once you're done with learning unit 3, then you should be good to go to complete them. Right, so without any further ado, let me start the session today. I'm going to share my screen, and if you message Adrian, are you talking about the date for the ICE tasks? I'll confirm that. It's somewhere in October, but I will confirm the exact date once I put the test up. Right, so I'm going to share my whiteboard. Just let me know once you can see the whiteboard. Pretty much, I've got a table here with 2 columns, student ID and score. If you can just give me a heads up that you can see it, then I'll continue. All right, fantastic. Thank you. All right, so let's begin. So, like I said, this learning unit will cover dispersion measures and central measures. I'm going to split it up with today covering central measures. So, what exactly is central measures? And I say that the thing is, pretty much all of you are familiar with some type of central measure. It's just you don't really understand that it actually falls under a statistical measure called central measures. So think of the average. Everyone must have worked with average at some point in their life. And average is a type of a central measure. So why it's called a central measure is, so by now you would have probably covered something called a histogram. All right, so a histogram maps out a distribution of something. So for instance, I think I've got a message, so just hold on. No, Kalisha, you haven't missed much. Pretty much starting the learning unit now. So I'm going to go over central measures. So like I said, I'm assuming pretty much all of you are comfortable with histograms, but just to do a quick recap. So a histogram basically shows the distribution of something. So let's say I was mapping out the marks of a class, right? And when I say marks, maybe they wrote some exam. Okay, they wrote economics. All right. So what I find is the histogram. It's like this. You basically have these rectangles, which shows the volume per score band. Okay, so on this axis here, so this bar, it's pretty much everyone that scored between 30 to 40. Then the next bar is 40 to 50. The next bar is 60, and so on and so on. Okay, so what I find is this histogram. You can see the largest bar is around here for the 60 to 70 mark, and then it starts tapering off because then what it's saying is, okay, then the amount of people that score exceptionally high start to decrease. All right. So that's your histogram, okay, for the class marks. Now, if I draw a line, I'm going to change the color of this line to, let's say, green. That just pretty much covers the corners of this histogram. Right? So if I want to, instead of using these blocks, I just want to get an idea of how this histogram looks. So it's like that. Draw it on a separate, if I draw the exact same line, that green line here on the right, okay, I'm just doing it just so you don't see that the blue blocks and I don't get as cluttered. So that same green line, the graph is here. This is the distribution of the class marks, right? So when you say central measures, what you're trying to see is where is this data centered? All right. Now, because this graph is symmetrical, when I say symmetrical, I mean if I draw, see the highest point, if I draw a line down, a vertical line down, then the right side, this side here on the right of the line, looks almost the same as what you see on the left. They look virtually identical. All right. So that's an idea of symmetry. Okay. So central measure says where is this data centered, and for a symmetrical graph, it's very easy to see the central measure. All right, because it's kind of the point of symmetry. However, it gets a bit tricky when the data isn't symmetrical. So for instance, the data now looks like this. So here, like this. So now it's skewed to the right. The graph looks like this. Now it's not symmetrical because if you draw a vertical line down where the highest point is, you can see that this side here, everything on the left, does not look the same as what's on the right. Okay, the point of so the value that you'd use to kind of characterize where the data is centered is not so straightforward. Okay, now for our purposes, there are pretty much three measures that will summarize how data is centered. Okay, so the first one that everyone's kind of familiar with is, or in other words, this is also known as the mean. So I'm just going to equals to mean, the same thing. All right. The other measure is the median. Okay, so that's another way we can measure the central location. So median, and then there's the third one. There's only three that we're going to cover. So the last one is the mode. Okay, and I'll explain each of them as we work through an example to kind of distinguish what's the difference. Okay, so you're going to know, you have to understand how to work with the mean, and how to work with the mode. All right, so let's start with this, the most simple one, and that's the mean, the average. And I'll do it with an example. So that's the table on the left is going to come in. All right, so what you have on the table on the left is pretty much just a bunch of students with their student ID. So the first column is their student ID, ST12, ST2, etc. And you may notice, okay, wait, the student number or the student ID is not ordered. And there's a reason for that. The reason being is because the score for each student, and this score could be for an economics test or any other test, it's not too important, but it's a score for a test. So student 12 scored 65, student 2 scored 68. So what is ordered is the score, right? And that's more important. Whatever you're trying to measure, that's what needs to be ordered. So for instance, we're trying to measure the score and we're trying to characterize how that is centered. And you'll see that I've put it in order. So smallest mark starting on the top with the highest marks at the bottom. So when you get data like this, and this is an example of ungrouped data, you've been given the raw data. When you are given the raw data, make it a habit to order it from lowest to highest, and that's going to help you in your calculations going forward. All right. So now that we have the scores and we put them in order, the first measure that we're going to calculate is the mean. Now, we're not going to do it the typical way of adding it all up and dividing by the number of students. Okay, I'm going to show you how to do it using the stats mode in your calculator. All right, so what you're going to do is, like I said in the announcement, have your calculator out there with you. So I'll give you maybe a few seconds just to take the calculator out, and hopefully all of you have the Casio calculator, and we're going to use the stat mode to work out the median. All right, now to do this, we need to understand some mathematical notation. All right, so the symbol for mean, all right, which you need to understand is this. I'm just going to change the color back to blue. Okay, the symbol for the mean is this here. It's an X with a bar across, and we call this X bar. Okay, all right, so let's store this data in our calculator, but using the stat mode. So with your Casio calculator, okay, you're going to press the button mode. Okay, it's on the top right. You'll press mode, and you'll choose the second option, which is stat. Okay, so in my calculator, stat is the second option, so you'll choose 2, and then you'll see an option in your calculator that says 1 minus var. That's the option you're going to choose. Okay, so you're going to select, if that option is number 1, then that's the option you're selecting. Okay, so you'll select that 1, and then for some of you, this is what you'll see in your calculator. You will see this. You'll see an X, and some of you will also see a frequency column. Okay, let me check the chat. 1 minus R, yes, that's right. All right, so if everyone's here, okay, I'm hoping everyone's on the same page as me now and you're following. All right, so what you're going to capture on the X is the data, okay, and what we're trying to measure are the student scores. So we need to capture the values here. So what you're going to do is the first value that you're going to capture is pretty much what you see in the table, in the data, which is 65. So the first mark you see is 65. So you're going to type where your cursor is on the calculator, you'll type 65, and then you'll press equals to. Right? You'll press this button here, equals to, and that's pretty much like your enter. Equals to, hit equals to, and you'll see the number has been captured. And then you do the same thing for the next number on the table, which is 68. So if all of you can start capturing these numbers, please. Press 68, then equals to, and do this until you captured all the numbers all the way to the last number here. There's 2 students that scored 79, so in the end, you're going to have 2. The second last row is going to be 79, and the last row is going to be 79. So once you do that, please, yeah, if you can just put a message in the chat that you've finished, so I know to move on. Okay, so capture those numbers in your calculator, please. Oh, sounds like a lot of you are finishing. Fantastic. Okay. Let's see how many students we have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11. We should have 11 students. 5, 6, 3. Everyone's done. Fantastic. All right. Okay, so we've got the data stored. All right. And you don't worry about the frequency column. For now, we don't have to worry about it. You'll see as you capture these numbers, this will just get populated with 1, and so you don't need to worry too much about this column for now. All right. Now at this point, the only button you do not press, and I kind of emphasize not, do not press the mode button. Okay, because if you press the mode button, and all this data gets deleted. So you can even press on, you can press the AC button, and the data will still be there. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. Just do not press the mode button. All right, now we're going to get the mean. We're going to get the mean from our calculator. And to retrieve this X bar, right, all you're going to do is, if you're going to get this X bar, you're going to, on your calculator, you're going to press Shift, and you're going to press the button 1, which says Stat. Wait, sorry. Just press on. Forget that. Just press on your calculator. Go back. Press the button on. All right. Once you press the button on, then press Shift. So I want you to press Shift. All right. And then press the button 1 because 1 has stat written above it. I want you to choose that. And then you should see a couple of options. And the option I want you to choose, which you should all see, is var, variables. That's what the var stands for. Number 4, variables. Okay, now if you select that, please, and then you'll see the symbol here, X bar. All right. If you see that symbol, choose it. This is option 2 in my calculator. So you'll press 2 and then press equals to, and you get the average, your X bar. Adrian, Adrian, you don't see that. Yeah. Adrian, press on in your calculator. Press the button on, and then press shift and press the button 1. Then you should see 5 options. Perfect. Then you'll choose the option variables 4, and then you'll choose the X bar. Everyone seems to have got the same answer. Fantastic. Everyone's on the same page. All right, good. Well done, everyone. So that's how you find the average, okay? So I want you to do it without me telling you now. Okay, so everyone press the on button in your calculator. Press the on button and get that X bar again. See, just check if you can remember the steps of how to get the average X bar. If anyone's stuck, just drop me a message in the chat. Otherwise, I'm just going to assume everyone knows how to do it now. Everyone can do it, I'm assuming. Okay, fantastic. All right. Now, you've captured the message. Wow, you think you know what you... all right. So you've captured all this data. All right. Now, if you want to know how many data points you've captured, all right, that is, there's a symbol for the number of data points, which is n. Okay, that's the number of data points. So if you want to know how many data points there are, do the same thing that I told you to get to here, var variables. So you press shift 1, variables 4, and then you'll see n there. And if you select that, which is option 1, that tells you that you've captured 11 data points. Okay, all good. Okay, that's how you get the average. Okay, let's move on now to the median. All right, the median. All right, now the difference between the median and the mean. Let me just kick up the board a bit. Okay, I'm going to use these graphs on the right to explain what is the difference. Okay, when you've worked out the average, the mean, all right, now you've noticed to work out the average in the calculation itself is you're actually adding up all these numbers and then you're dividing by 11 because they are 11 numbers. Now, the thing about the average is it's affected by outliers. Now, what do I mean by outliers? Outliers means there are data points that just stand out from the rest. Okay, so there's this one student. Okay, let's make up the student number 100, and this student scored 99. You can see this mark is significantly higher than everything else. All right, so this could be considered as an outlier. But what does this student's mark do to the average? Okay, because it's so high, what does it do? What do you think it'll do to the average? Anyone take a guess in the chat? Yeah, exactly. Fantastic. It's going to bring up the average. It's going to increase the average. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that the average is affected by outliers. Okay, this example kind of shows you that. Now the median, however, is different. The median, let's say the student didn't exist for now, all right? The median doesn't add up the numbers. How you find the median is you look for the middle number. Now, this is why I told you it's important that you rank the numbers from lowest to highest, because when you do that, you can see what the median is. Okay, now when there's an odd number of numbers, so in our case, that is the case because we have 11 data points. Okay, n is equal to 11. Now, there's an odd number of data points. So what I'm going to do here, just so you can visually see it, I'm going to write these scores horizontally. Okay, so 65, bear with me, 65, 68, that's 71, 72, 74, 75, 76, 77, and then 279. 79 again. Let me see about everything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, now the reason why I wrote it out like this is because when you write it out like this, visually you can see what the middle number is. Okay, because you have 11 numbers, okay, it will be the sixth number. And I'll explain how you get that in general. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it would be this number here. This would be the median. And you can see that there are 5 numbers on the right, and then there are 5 numbers on the left. So that's the middle number. This would be the median. Okay, that's the median number. And it isn't affected by outliers. Okay, so what as an example, think about it like this. Okay, say there are 2 other students that come in. The one student on the far left scored 25, very, very poor mark. And then the other high flying student scored 100. Now you can see these are outliers, all right? But they don't affect the median because the median still remains in the middle. So the median is not affected by outliers. Okay, and I hope this example kind of explains that. All right. It doesn't matter what the outliers do to the data, it doesn't affect the median. All right, so I'm just going to erase these outliers here and show you in general how you calculate the median. Now, in general, to work at the median, you need to work at the position. Now, for here, I just told you that it's the sixth number, right? But in general, to know what the position is, this is the formula. Okay, the formula to work at the position for the median is n plus 1 over 2. And in our case, the n is 11, right? That's what our n is. So if you put the n into the formula, you're going to have 11 plus 1 all over 2, which is 6, 12 over 2. And that's how I got the sixth number. Okay, that's how you work at the position. All right, but now let's say there's an even number of numbers. Then it's not so straightforward, okay? So this is how we do it. All right, move this. As an example, I'm just going to add an extra student to these numbers. All right, so let's say there's this 12 student that came in and this student scored 80. All right, so now let me get rid of this so I don't confuse you. 75 is still there. And now we're going to work at the position, right? Because now we have 12 students. Okay, our n is now 12. Okay, if you count the numbers here, you'll see there are 12 students. So in our case, it's going to be 12 plus 1 all over 2. And that is, if you work this out, you're going to get, what is it, 6.5. 6.5. So it's that's the position. Okay, but now you can see that, okay, wait, hold on. This is 6.5. This is a decimal. So how do I make sense of 6.5 when I'm counting? All right, so what you do is, when it's 6.5, that means you take the sixth number, and because 6.5 is in between 6 and 7, that means you're going to take the sixth number and the seventh number, right? And you're going to add them up, and you divide them by 2. Okay, so for our example, which is the sixth number? Well, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is 75. This is your sixth number here. And then your seventh number will be here. So your median is adding up these two numbers and dividing by 2. So it's 75 plus 76 all divided by 2. And if you work that out, you should have 75.5. That's the median. Okay, I'm just going to stop there for a second. Does it make sense, people? That's how you work with the median when you have an even number of numbers. In our case, our position is 6.5. This is the position. Okay, this is the position. Excuse me, I didn't have much space to write this here, so I just wrote that. So this is your, I'm going to write it better. All right, and what we do with this position, well, because it's a decimal at 6.5, so that means you take the sixth number and the seventh number, we add them up, and we divide by 2, which is what we've done here. And in this case, our median is 75.5. Everyone okay with this, with the median? Check if I lost anyone. All good. Fantastic. Great. Glad to hear it. All right. So now we've done the mean, we've done the median. Now let's work out the mode. The mode is actually very, very easy. There's not much calculations involved. It's just a matter of looking at the data. All right. So in our case, I'm gonna clear this out. Okay. Remember that AQ was not in our data. Originally, excuse me. The definition of the mode is the most frequent number, the number that occurs the most amount of times. And by looking at this data, looking at all the marks here, which number occurs the most amount of times? If you could just put that number in the chat. Yeah, exactly. Well done. That's the mode. The number that you put in the chat, that is the mode, because that's the most frequent number. So the mode is equal to 79. That's the most frequent number. Just so you know, as a hypothetical example, right, you can have more than one mode. Okay, it can happen. So for instance, let's say hypothetically, you had 79, but you also had, there was space here, space here. Hypothetically, let's say 75 occurred twice. So you had 75 and you had 75 again. So now you can see 75 occurs twice and so does 79. So that means you have two modes. So you would say the mode, how you'd answer this is, you would say the mode is 75 and 79. You can have more than one mode, right? Just remember that it is possible, okay? Because it's a tie. 75 occurs twice and so does 79, right? Okay, so that's pretty much central measures for ungrouped data. This is ungrouped data, right? And it's just important that you take away the concepts from this for ungrouped data, because we are going to move on to group data. Another thing I want you to remember from this is with these three measures, all right? So give me a second. Let me just clear this board out so I can explain what I'm talking about. Okay. All right, cool. So remember what we worked at. Okay, so our mean was, I think our mean was 74. I think so. Median that we worked out was 70. What is our mean? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It was 75. That's the middle number. Our mode was 79. All right, so these are our three central measures. Now, if you know these three central measures, you can actually determine what shape this distribution is. Okay, what you need to take away from this is that when a distribution is symmetrical, like this one, okay, like bell shaped, okay, when it's symmetrical, then what happens if you have one number printed twice and one thrice? So cliche, then the number that occurs thrice is your mode. It's the number that occurs the most amount of times. I think you dropped off. Okay, I hope that answers that. Okay, all right. So this, when your data is symmetrical, all right, then what that implies is that your mode, these three measures here, they're almost the same, right? If they are equal or very, very close to each other. So let's say, for instance, your mean was 74, your median was like 74.1, and your mode was 74.02. You can see these numbers aren't exact, and in reality, they don't generally equal exactly each other, but they can be very close to each other. And when this happens, then the data is symmetrical. It will look like this. Okay, so this is an example of when it's symmetrical. Okay. What happens is you can have the case what we have right now, where the mean is actually the smallest. Okay, so the mean is 74, the median is the next number, and then the mode is the highest. Okay, now when that happens, then your data is actually shaped like this. Put this in green. Okay, your mode will sit. What? I have no idea what's happening here. Hold on. Okay. All right. So here, the peak is here, and then it scales out like this. Okay. So here, this is what's happening. Our mode, your mode generally sits where the peak is, the highest point. Okay, the highest point in this graph, that's where your mode is. Your mode corresponds to the value on this axis here, the number line here. So this is where your mode is. All right, with the highest point. And you can see it's the highest. So think of this line that I've drawn here, this horizontal line. This is the number line. So as you move to the right, the numbers increase, and as you move to the left, it decreases. And so that means the mean is the lowest number in the scale, so it's far left. It's somewhere around here. It doesn't have to be exact. The idea is just to know where they are relative to each other. So here, this is your mean. I'm going to write x bar instead, because we all know that that's the same thing as the mean. There's your mean, it's smallest, and then your median sits in the middle. Here's your median. Your median. I'm just going to write ME as short form. Okay. So this is the shape of your data when the mode is the largest and the mean is the smallest. And we say that this data is skewed to the left. Okay. This one is skewed to the right. Yeah, this one. This is skewed to the left, and this is skewed to the right. Now, when it's skewed to the right, what happens is the mode is the smallest. So now it's switched around. The mode is now the smallest. The median is still in the middle, and then the X bar is the largest. They switched around. And when that happens, then the data is skewed to the right. Okay, so that's the takeaways I want you to remember, using the central measures to determine the shape of this distribution. All right, so there's basically three shapes a distribution can have. It can be symmetrical, it can be skewed to the right, or skewed to the left. Another way of saying skewed to the right is positively skewed, and then you get negatively skewed for skewed to the left. It's the same thing, right? You don't have to know all of them, but just understand it's the same thing. All right. Hoping that's clear. If there aren't any questions, then I'm going to move on to ungrouped data. Okay. Please let me know if anything was unclear. I'm going to move on to sorry, now I'm going to move on to group data. Group data. All right. So what do I mean by group data? Now, group data, you don't explicitly know what the data values are. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you're not given the raw data. Let's look at an example here to kind of explain what I'm trying to say. So what we've captured here, and I just want you to pay attention to, why am I not getting my, oh, this is not great. Oh, sorry, everyone. I'm just going to restart this one, okay? There we go. All right. I just want you to focus on the first two columns of this table. So here, what I'm going to mark in blue, just pay attention to these two columns. Okay, don't worry about the other ones. All right. So this is an example of data that can be given to you in a question paper, exam, or assignment, etc. You will generally just be given these first two columns, right? And let's try and make sense of what they mean. So the data you're given here is basically consumers' expenditure in a mall. All right. So what the first column is showing you is that the value that customers spend on groceries. So for instance, that's this first column is saying everyone that spends between 0 and less than 400 rand. So 3.99 and 99 cents basically. And you can see there's nobody. The frequency column tells you that there's nobody that spends that little. Okay. The next row says, okay, how many people spend between 400 rand and less than 800 rand? So 7.99 and 99 cents. And here, the second column is telling us there's 7 people that spend that amount. Okay, so you get where I'm going with this, all right? That's how you interpret each of these rows. So the last row is telling you that there's only one person that spends between 2,000 and 2,400 rand. 2,400 rand. All right. Let me know if that makes sense to you, okay? That's how you interpret this data. So you don't know, for instance, this person in the last row, okay, this last person that spent between 2,000 and 2,400, you don't know what he spent or she spent. That person could have spent 2,250 or 2,300, but we don't know that. We just know that spend in that bracket. Okay, so this is an example of group data. You don't explicitly know the values that each individual person spent. You just know that they spent in that bracket. All right. So that's the first two the first two columns. Now you can be expected to answer questions like, what is the average for this data? So in other words, work out X bar. So what is the average expenditure? What do people spend on average in the small, given this data, given the first two columns? All right, so the first thing we're going to tackle is the average. All right, so we're going to do this in a couple of steps. Okay, we're going to create these next two columns. We have to create this column, and then we're going to create this column here to work it out. Now I'm going to show you the long way and the short way. Okay, I do need to show you both, but when I show you the short way with your calculator, it's really, really simple. Okay, the first thing you need to do is, okay, you're going to create a column with the midpoints, all right, the midpoints. And what are the midpoints? Well, the midpoint is just basically looking at this first column, looking at this column, and determining what the middle value is for each bracket. And what I mean by that is, let's look at this, the first row. Okay, we're just going to look at the first row. We know that that bracket is 0 to 400. So the lower limit is 0, and the upper limit is 400. So we're going to add the lower limit and the upper limit. Okay, 0 plus 400 over 2, that gives you 200. And that's the midpoint. That's how we got the midpoint here. So we do the same thing for the next row. Okay, we're going to add the lower limit, which is 400, plus the upper limit, which is 800, and we divide that by 2. Okay, and we get 600. And that's how we get the next midpoint. And so you see where I'm going with this. Okay, you do the same process all the way to the last row. Okay, that's how you get the midpoints. Okay, 200 all the way to 2,200. I'm going to pause there for a second just to make sure I didn't lose anyone and everyone understands how to get this midpoint column. All good with that? Just give me some feedback to say you're okay with that or not. Thanks, Alicia. Thanks, everyone. Okay, fantastic. All right. Good. Really appreciate the feedback. All right. Now we're going to get the next column. All right. The next column, and I'm going to show you how to do it. Why we do it, I'll explain that in the end. Okay. So just bear with me. The next column is very simple. Okay. You've already done a lot of the work to get the X column, the midpoint. Just know that the symbol for the midpoint is X. Okay. So the symbol for midpoint in this column is X, which is why you see it here. And you see it here. X. Now, Fx means you take your frequency, your F column, right? This is your frequency column, and you just multiply it by this X column. So it's F times X. That's what this column means, F times X. So you multiply these two values, okay? 0 times 200 gives you 0. 7 times 600 gives you 4,200, etc., etc., all the way to the last row, which is 1 times 2,200, which gives you this value here. All right. Now, once you've got all the values in this column, all right, you're going to insert the total of this column here, in the total. So that means you add up all these values here from the top to the bottom. Okay, 0 plus 4,200 plus 14,000, 7,000, 5,400, 2,200, etc. Add them all up, and you'll get this value here, 32,800. Okay. Now, why we did all of this is because you are given this formula in your formula sheet, okay, to work out the average for group data. And so this table that we've pretty much worked through was to get these values for the formula. So if you look at the numerator, let's just look at the numerator in this equation. I'm only looking at what's on top of the fraction, the sum fx. The sum fx. That's what you've done here. That's what this is. Okay, remember what we just did. This column is your fx. So if you look at what's in front of the sigma sign, everything in front of it, which is this fx, that's the last column. That's the fx. And what the sigma means is add up all the fx values, which is what you've done in the last row here. You've added it all up. Okay, remember what I told you to do here? We're adding it up. You add up all of them and you get this 32,800. So that's what the numerator is. You've done all the hard work to work out the numerator, 32,800. Okay, that's the numerator. Then you got the denominator in this equation now. The denominator is sum of f. Sum of f. Okay, and that is very simple. Well, simply just, there's your f column here. This is your f column. So if you just total or sum up the f values in all the rows, if you add up all these values, you'll get 30, which is what I've done for you here. And that's your denominator. So your denominator is 30. There you go. So you have all the values you need to put into this formula. And if you do that, okay, you should get a value of 32,800 divided by 30. I did it already somewhere. 1093,33, I think. You can just double check that for me. 1093,33. Thanks, Felicia. Thank you. Appreciate that. So 1093,33. Okay, everyone's okay with this. I know this is a very long method to do it, but you do need to know how to do it. Okay, and I do need to explain that to you. 1093.33. Now I'm going to show you the shortcuts, and you're going to love the shortcut method, right? You're going to love your calculator even more. Now, okay, now we've got some new data to store on our calculator. So before I told you never press the mode button because you'll erase your data. But now we do need to press it because we're going to need to capture new data. So you need to reset the data. In order to do that, press mode in your calculator and then choose stat again. Okay, so you press mode in your calculator and then press the stat option again. All right. When you do that, you'll see the option 1 minus bar again, just like before. So you're going to select that. And you're going to choose that option. Okay, now I want, by show of hands, how many of you only have an X column? That is, there's nothing here. There's nothing on the right of it. Some of you have frequency. Some of you won't have frequency. I want to know who doesn't have frequency. Okay, a lot of people. All right, so what we're going to do, I'm going to show you how to set up your calculator so that you do have the frequency column. Okay, and once you have the frequency column, you don't have to do it again. It's going to be there all the time. All right, so just follow my steps and I'll explain to you how to do it. All right, for everyone that doesn't have frequency, okay, I'm going to erase this and I'm going to explain the steps to you. Okay. All right, your calculator, just press on. Okay, we're starting fresh. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to press shift. So you're going to press shift first. Right, then you press mode. Shift mode. And you're going to see a lot of options there, right? 1, 2, all the way to 8. What the option that I'm looking for is stat, right? And some of you won't see that. So what you do is scroll down. So use the cursor, that big blue button with the arrows in it, move down and you'll see this option stat here. Once you see this option once you see this option stat, whatever number it has next to it. So for my calculator, it has 3 there. You're going to press that number because that's the option you need to choose. So it's going to be, if it's 3, you press 3, and then you'll see something that prompts you to select whether you want the frequency on or off. You want on or off. And we want the frequency column, remember? So we're going to choose on, which is in option 1 in my calculator. So you select the option that says on. All right. Now, let me see if everyone's on the same page. That's got it. Okay, now can everyone repeat the steps that I did earlier? Okay, So you can press on your calculator, you press mode, press stat, choose this option here, 1 minus var, and everyone should have frequency in the second column. And I'll just check the chat now. If anyone that doesn't have it, should have frequency here. Oops. Okay, everyone's got it. I don't see anyone that doesn't. Okay, well done all. Well done. All right, so now we're going to make use of this frequency column, because here you can see in our data, we have a frequency column. So we're going to have to capture values there. All right, so just give me a second. Okay, so in our calculator, everyone's got the X column and you got the frequency column. For the X column, you're going to capture the midpoints. Whatever the midpoints you have, in our case here it is, it's done for you. It's 200, 600, 1,000, whatever. So the value you'll capture here is 200 all the way down till 2,200. Sorry, 2,200, right, as before. For the frequency, you're going to move the cursor to this column here, and you're going to capture the values that you see here, 0, 7. So what you'll be capturing for the frequency column is 0, 7, all the way till 1. Don't capture the 30 because that's the total, okay? So the last number you'll have is 1. So can you do that for me, please? Just capture both column of values that you see in the table, and make sure you don't mix it up, okay? Don't capture the frequency in the X column and so on, okay? Because then it's going to mess everything up. So make sure frequency remains in this frequency column and X remains in the X column. Can you give that a shot? They got a message in the chat. Hold on. Dun. Fantastic. Nice work. Oh, nice work. Okay, you're working a bit faster than me. So, a second. I'm just capturing the frequency column. All right. Now let's see if you remember the steps to get X bar. I did that early on. You did it for ungrouped data, but the step is exactly the same for group data now. You're going to try and get this value here, X bar. I want the average. See if you can remember the steps to get the average. And once you got it, write it down in the chat. I'm going to give you 1 minute to do it. Okay, if nobody's put the answer there. Okay, I think everyone's forgot the steps. I don't blame you. It's new to you, but this emphasizes why you need to work with this more often, okay? Because the steps aren't explained to you in the exam. You need to remember how to use your calculator. All right, so let's do it. What you need to take away is, okay, the values that you kind of work out, the X bar, and you'll get to variance later, etc. Those are statistical measures. So if you look at your calculator, there's only one button that actually has stat above it, and that's your button 1. If you look at the button 1, the stat written above it. And because it's written above it, that means when you want to access the stat, you have to use the shift button, okay? It's a secondary option. So you press shift, the button 1, and then you'll see the option that says variables, which is option 4. Now this should ring a bell. Okay, if you select that, then you'll see X bar. When you select that, hit equals to and tell me, write what you get in the chat. Ariana, I think you may have captured one of the numbers wrong. Everyone should be getting 1093. Should be getting 1093.33. This is what you should get. Elton, yeah. Elton, press, okay. What I want you to do is press on in your calculator. Press on in your calculator. Then do it again. Shift the number 1. Then you should see 5 options. And if you don't, all right, then choose the option that says variables. Okay, fantastic. Okay. Adrian, so I know you've got a different X bar, and that probably means that you captured one of the data points incorrectly. So this is a way to fix it, okay? And you can double check your calculator, the data that you captured. Okay, so everyone can press on in their calculator. You press on. If you want to see the data that you captured, okay, press Shift, then press 1, and then the option that says Data 2. Select that option. And then if you do that, you'll see your table of data again, right? And then you need to look at what you captured versus what's here, what's given to you on the board. And say you made a mistake. Your data, say this 200, the first number that you captured was incorrect. Okay, you captured something that was wrong. All you need to do is move the cursor to it until it's highlighted. Move the cursor to it, re-enter the value, and hit equals to again. Okay, that'll overwrite it. Okay, so just remember that. That's how you can edit your data. And then once you edit it, you can press on and do the whole thing again. Yes. Okay. Okay, so everyone's good at this. You know how to work the average. I've showed you how to do it the long way and the shortcut is your calculator, the way we just did it now. The key thing is just capturing the data into your calculator. And everyone's calculator is set up. So you've got frequency as a column and you've got your X for your points. All right. So we've done with the average. Now we're going to move on to the median and then the mode. We're going to finish off with the mode. Right, so let's get ready for that. Okay, I wrote a lot here, so I'm going to actually reopen this. But yeah, all right, let's go to the median. So now we're going to get to the median. Now in the median, you've got this formula. So you don't have to be intimidated by memorizing this formula. You don't need to memorize it. Okay, it's given to you, but you do need to understand how to use it. Okay. Now for the median, because the data is grouped, we have to follow this formula to work it out. Okay. And the first thing you need to do before you even start looking at what the values are in the equation is identify what is your median interval. Okay, so I'll write that down, your median interval. Now I'll explain what that means now in a second. Okay, so by definition, as we did earlier on, the median is the middle number. Okay, it's the number that's in the middle. But here, we don't know what the middle number is because we don't explicitly know the numbers, the actual data. But the best we can do is to guess which interval would have that middle number. Okay. And to do that, well, look at how many data points you have. The number of data points you have is the total of the frequency. So remember, if you add up if you add up F, you'll get your the number of data points. Your N is the sum of your frequencies, which is 30. Okay, so that means you've got 30 data points. Okay, 30 data points. If you had 30 data points and you rank them in order, so the lowest going to the highest, you would start off with your first and you would end up with your 30th number. Okay, if you had to order them. So the middle number would be round about 15, wouldn't it? Because it's the middle number, right? How did I work that out? It's 30 That's the number of data points you have over 2. That's how you work with the middle number. That's over 2, and that's 15. So it's the 15th number. So if you look at the frequency column, okay, you need to determine where would the 15th data point be. Okay, so let's look at the first row. In the first row here, there is no data points. There's nothing here. So it definitely can't be here, right? If you look at the next row, in the next row, you have 7 people that shop. So in total, you have 7 people going from here to here. So that still wouldn't have the 15th person because the 7th person is somewhere here, right? So we're still under. But now when you move to the third one, when you move to the third interval, you can see here you've got just 14. You got 14 just in this interval, but up until this point, you keep adding them up. You've got 0 people, you've got 7, now you've got 21. So when you get to this third interval here, when you get to this third interval, you have 21 people. Can you see that? Because it's 0 plus 7 plus 14. So by the time you get to the third interval, you're somewhere here. You're by the 21st person. So that means that middle person, that 15th number, has to be here. It can only be in this interval here. Does that make sense, everyone? Does it make sense why it cannot be in the first interval and the second one? Because you're still short. When you get to the first and second interval, you're only here. There's no way you would have reached the 15th person because you've only covered 7 people. And that's why when you get to the third interval, then that middle number has to be here in this interval. Does that make sense, everyone? This is very important before we move on. It's vitally important that you identify this interval. Thanks, everyone. Everyone all good? Okay. All right. Okay. Yes. Like I said, it's very important that you get this interval right, okay? Because if you get this interval wrong, then everything else goes wrong because the numbers are based on what you see in this interval. So I'm leaving this block here, this mark here, so that we don't lose track of what the median interval is, okay? It's this third interval. So now that you know that that is the median interval, then all the values from this formula, everything that you see here is based on that interval. So this OME, this first symbol that you see here, O as a subscript of ME, that by definition is the lower limit of that interval. So if we look at this interval, the lower limit of that interval, the lower class bound is 800. That's the lowest the spending can be. So that is 800. The next symbol in the formula is C. C is the width of the class. If you look at any of the class, they all have the same width. If you look at this interval here, it goes from 800 to 1200. So the width of the class is basically 1200 minus the lower limit. That's how wide it is, and 400. Okay, so that's your C. The next symbol is your N, and we have our N. I did it earlier for you. It's your sum of your frequency. Okay, it's the total number of data points. So N is steady. Okay, so we're getting there. Now we've got this symbol here. So it almost looks like it's a couple of symbols, but it's actually just one. It's this F bracket less than. It's this thing here. I'm gonna maybe put it in green. Okay, this whole thing here is one symbol. It's one value. Okay, and what this green value is, it's basically telling you is what is the cumulative frequency. So it's basically telling you add up all the frequencies before that interval. So here's our interval, all right? This is our median interval. It's telling you to add up the frequencies before that, and that is adding up the 7 and the 0. So it's the 7 plus the 0. So 7 plus 0. Add up all the frequencies before that, and that is 7. Okay, so that's your F of less than. Then the last symbol that you need, okay, the last symbol in that equation is what you see in the denominator. It's the FME. And that means the frequency of your median interval. What is the frequency of this interval? The frequency of this interval is 14. That's the value. Okay, so I know the symbols may not be intuitive, but you just need to understand that's what it means. Okay, so that's the takeaway from this. Understand what these symbols mean so that once you identify your interval of interest, so in our case, the median interval, you can pull out these values based on that. And now that you've got all the values that you need, okay, so your f of less than is 7, FME is 14, N is 30, your C is 400, okay, your OME is 800, you can plug it all into this formula. If you put all those values into the formula, you will calculate your median. And if you do that, once you put all those values into the formula, you'll find that your median is, and I did it somewhere, 1028.57. Can we go back there? You can try that now as an exercise in your calculator. Okay, 1028.57. This is practice for your calculator. You've got all the values you need to put into the formula. Okay, so all the values, FME, your f of less than, your C, your N, and your OME. Plug it all into that formula, into this formula, and you should all get the same value that I'm getting. And this is practice using brackets in your calculator, using division and BODMAS or BOMDAS. Got it. Fantastic. Good news, Adrian. Everyone else, I think you saw. I'll leave it open for a bit so you can see the values. But this is practice to work out the median. Okay, I'm going to show you a sense check that everyone should do when they do this, okay? This is a sense check to see that your answer makes sense. All right. Now, remember, we said that this is the median interval. Okay, the median interval is 800 to 1,200. Okay, remember that. So if we work out the median, the value must be in that interval. Okay, and this is your sense check. Look at the value you got. You got 1028. Okay, so let's round it up. I'll make it easier. 1029. Okay, 1029. Does 1029 lie in this interval? If it does, then yeah, okay, our answer makes sense. If that number does not lie, so say for instance, I had worked out a value that was 1,300. I know I must have made a mistake somewhere. Okay, go and check your work because 1,300 is outside of this interval and that can't happen. Whatever median interval you determined was the median interval, the answer you get in the end for the median must lie in that interval. That's your sense check, okay? Make sure you understand that. Okay, so if everyone's good at this, I'm just going to pause it for a second before I move on to the mode. Everyone's good. Okay. All right, we're going to finish up with the mode, okay? This is the last one now. It's a very similar process to the median, very similar. All right, so let me start again. All right, the last one we're going to do is the mode. Okay, it's a very similar process, right, as the median. So like we did before, let me get some marker. Like we did before, we had to determine the interval. So for the mode, by definition, the mode is the most frequent number, okay? The number that occurs the most amount of times. So your mode is the most frequent number. Most frequent number. But we don't have the numbers exactly. Remember, we don't have the raw data. But the best we can do is use the frequency. We can use which bracket or class has the highest frequency. Can everyone see which class it is? Is it the first one? Is it the first class, second class, third, fourth, first, sixth? You tell me in the chat. Which class has the highest frequency? First, second, third, fourth, fifth. Yes, fantastic. Well done, everyone. It's the third class. Right, so I'm going to erase some stuff here. Well done. That's the frequency that, I'm sorry, that's the class that has the highest frequency. So that is the modal interval. Okay, that's how you identify the modal interval. Right, so I'll leave that arrow there because we know that that's what we mean for our modal interval. Okay, so this is your model interval here. Okay, you found your model interval, and just like the median, once you got that interval, all the values in this equation is based on that interval. So the first symbol is OMO. OMO is the lower limit of that interval, and that is 800. Okay, it's the lowest value that that interval could have. Okay, you can see, start from 800. The next value you have is C, and that is just like before. It's the class width. Okay, so 1200 minus 800, it's 400. That's the width of the class. All right. Next value is f of m with f subscript m. This fm, all right, is the frequency of the modal interval. So what is the frequency of the modal interval? It's 14. Okay, 1, 4. Then you have another symbol, f subscript m minus 1. Okay, so don't confuse this minus 1 here in the formula as you subtracting 1. It's this minus 1 actually, this is what it means. It's a subscript. It's telling you that look at the interval before the modal interval. What is the frequency of that? Anyone want to take a guess? So it's the interval before the modal interval. What is the frequency of that? Very good, everyone. Well done. Well done. So that's 7. So if fm minus 1 is the frequency of the interval before, what do you think fm plus 1 is? If fm minus 1 is the interval before, fm plus 1 is the interval. Anyone want to take a guess on the value? Well done. Yes, excellent. That's right. It's the interval after. So that's 5. Nicely done, everyone. That's your 5. And that's pretty much all the symbols that you need. Because the denominators, it's the same thing. It's the same symbols. You're just combining them together. So you have everything you need to plug into this equation. Okay, just a note, I've seen some students make this mistake, okay? In the denominator, you have 2 fm minus 1, pen is irritating me, minus fm minus 1 minus fm plus 1. Students tend to forget this 2 here. You need to remember that this multiplies fm. Okay, so what you would have in the denominator is 2 times 14, so that's your fm, minus fm minus 1, which is 7, minus 5. Okay, that's your denominator. So just remember not to make that mistake, okay? So you have all the values to plug into the equation. And if you can just do that for me, that's when we'll finish up. This is practice in your calculator. Once you do that, just write the value in the chat and I'll tell you whether you're on the right track. That's one answer so far. Felicia, remember to do the sense check. Remember what I told you? Whatever value you get in the end, you need to make sure that it's in that interval. If it's not, then there's some mistake somewhere. Remember that. Yes, 975. That's right. The answer is 975. And then remember to do your sense check, okay, everyone? Is 975 in that interval? And yes, it is, because it's greater than 800 and it's under 1,200. So that's an indicator that your working is correct. All right, that is it, everyone. That is central measures. You know now how to do it for ungrouped data as well as group data. All right. Are there any questions? All good? No problem. I'm glad. All right. Thanks for joining, everyone. I'll make the recording available by tomorrow. and have a wonderful long weekend. Enjoy the holiday. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. I appreciate that, Adrian. Really appreciate that. All right, everyone. Enjoy. All the best.